secure intel, and loot to gain access to new missions. Enemy threat is high, so expect contact.
I think a lot of us Tarkov heads were expecting the anticipation of DMZ to be something somewhat similar to it, but the fact of the reality is it's not that. In fact, the only part of DMZ that is even remotely close to Tarkov are some of the kind of ideas for quests and losing guns when you die. The similarities end there. And while I personally hoped it would have been a little tougher on the player when death occurred, the fact it isn't doesn't make it any less interesting or fun. DMZ is its own thing, so we should talk about it as such. And from playing the mode for a couple days now, the aspects that are there are very much interesting. However, there are some things about it that I do hope see improvement over time. Immediately, the AI is probably one of my personal favorite parts of the mode. They behave as I hoped they would. They work together, they take cover, they flank, they use utility. It's awesome when you hold up in a building and see a helicopter drop a squad of AI around you where you're forced to fight them. Especially if you only have access to like one armor plate, even just one AI can be scary because while they aren't aim body assassins like other games, they still do a lot of damage very quickly and can take you out if you're not careful. Now, of course, they can still be derpy and unaware of your presence even when right in front of them, but for the most part, it's kind of a breath of fresh air to have AI do interesting shit. They're not perfect, but from coming from Tarkov and its AI, I'll take what I can, so right off the bat, it's a major improvement from what I'm used to. The primary loop of DMZ is completing your missions for whatever faction you're working towards. There are a lot of different things to do when you enter DMZ, so if you're unsure about what your goal should be, or if you're overwhelmed, at the very least you can always try to focus on your missions. There are plenty of other things to do in the world, which is nice. Loot, you try to find other players and fight them, you can complete contracts, you can try to fight strongholds. They definitely put some thought into the 30-second loop of DMZ, and it's appreciated. Perfect? No, of course not, but it's better than being a quiet, barren landscape that's empty. The cherry on top is some of the events that can occur while you're running around. Other players can activate events that notify the lobby, letting you know something big is going down somewhere on the map. A team could be entering a stronghold, attempting to control a nav site to prevent extractions, or simply trying to extract themselves. The game does a really solid job of keeping you informed as to what's going on around the map. The comparison for Tarkov to be when people activate extracts like any of the vans or the bunker hermetic on reserve, and then the text, it turns green and red depending on what's happening. It's actually really neat, and I really appreciate their attention to detail with stuff like that. Now, probably the biggest disappointment for myself personally was the lack of impact the game has when you die. The worst thing is that all the stuff you looted, plus whatever guns you brought in on you, are gone. Technically, any higher tiered vests and gas masks are gone too, but those are common enough that the penalty doesn't really feel like one. My hope was being able to store some of those utility items like bigger bags, vests, and more. It would have been cool to have even just 3 or 4 of those laying around in case you wanted to go in with more health, but again, they're common enough that it's okay. It's funny too because the biggest loss you can have is your custom built weapon that's on roughly a 10-hour cooldown when you initially die, but this is reduced by how much money you extract with, which isn't a huge issue considering the guns you pick up off the dead AI and can find in the world are very serviceable. They're not min-maxed by any stretch of the imagination, but they can get the job done very easily. And with how little you will most likely run into other players on a game-by-game basis unless you are specifically going gun-ho for it, the pre-built weapons do their job and then some. Overall, when death occurred, I was just hoping for just a little more oomph when you die. I just get another gun or even just go in with fists afterwards to make it work. It's not that difficult, so it's kind of like a 0 to hero run, and it's really not that painful, which is a disappointment, but I understand why they did it that way. What is somewhat of a challenge, however, is playing DMZ by yourself. As someone who primarily played Tarkov as a solo for years on end, with how quickly you can take out enemies, being by yourself is hard but very doable given the right circumstances. In DMZ, however, enemies of all types have a lot more health, and you only have so much ammo in a single mag. So, trying to take out a group of 3 straight up is very difficult to achieve because everyone's already so spongy. Is it possible? Yeah, of course, but I haven't done it yet, and I'm really, trying to have that flow of gameplay where I can actually effectively take out a squad of 3. But it is difficult when you don't have the right equipment or weapons with high ammo capacity or the ability to one-shot down people. So it's difficult, and I'm going to keep trying, and hopefully I can get it eventually, because that's my goal right now, is to find a 3-man and, you know, take my time, be really thoughtful, be tactical, use everything in my arsenal, guns, equipment, kill streaks, whatever I have, and I really want to take out a 3-man successfully and like loot all the bodies. That's like my goal right now. So hopefully I can do that and I can show it off. DMZ is a very interesting new mode for COD to try their hands at. At the very least, it's refreshing to see them actually attempt something new, and I commend them for doing that instead of just hashing out the same game for the umpteenth time because it works. Making it free to play was also a huge win as well for those who weren't interested or impressed by the rest of the game. It allows people who may have an interest in Tarkov but are intimidated by how difficult it is to try something similar, kind of get their bearings, see if they like it, and then if they do, maybe try Tarkov and see if they can take that much more by the helm and get an understanding of that much more complex and interesting game. It's a great foundation to a mode, and I hope that it gets iterated upon with each new season. It has problems, but so does the rest of the game, especially with a lot of, you know, technical glitches and bugs and errors and crashes and all that stuff. They still happen, a lot less because of the Season 1 update, but they still do. But it's certainly better than Warzone 2.0, at least in my opinion, which I think I'm going to dedicate a whole other video to as well, so, you know, stay tuned for that. In the meantime, if you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel, be sure to like and subscribe for more videos about the things that I find interesting and want to have a conversation about. I hope to see you in future ones.